I think it would be best to just go ahead and start. I just started the recording.
Okay,
Great.
perfect. Well, let's get started then. So before we begin, just a few announcements. Thank you everyone for joining our December 18th meeting. Um, just to welcome some of our new members in the month of December. Brittany Knutson is the Director of Human Resources at River Valley Remodelers. So welcome Brittany to LASHRM. And Gracie Bass is our student member. And remember, students can join for no cost. And we love to have student members joining us. Not only is it great for your networking, but you can learn a few things along the way. So welcome to both Brittany and Gracie. Our 2024 LASHRM board, bittersweet. This will be the last meeting has me being president. So have been so grateful to be part of this group. I'll be moving into the past president role now for 2025. Taylor Forshee will be moving into the president role. We are thankful for Jeanette's leadership as past president. Allie, Emily, Megan, Aaron, and Cara, and we'll soon be sharing the 2025 board, but we're not going anywhere. So hang tight. So here it is. Myself, past president, Taylor, president, Jonathan Trapp is president-elect. Allie will continue as treasurer. Emily will continue as secretary. Megan will continue as membership director. Aaron will be helping not only with some programming, but also emerging professionals. Kara Strupp is our certification director. Emily Weaver, welcome to Emily, as our governmental and diversity affairs director. Whitney Winkers is joining us as the social media director. And Mary Zarnot will be helping with the emerging HR professionals. So this is your 2025 board. We thank you to our sponsors as well for 2024, the WCCU Credit Union, Express Employment, the Insurance Center, the Alliance, and Paylocity. And if you are joining us and have an interest to be one of our sponsors, please reach out to the board members because we still have some opportunities for chapter sponsors. So reach out to us and we will get you the information on the benefits of being a sponsor, as well as which categories or areas are still available. So we appreciate all of our sponsors. So some things to keep in mind. I know this may seem like it's a ways out, but our third annual nonprofit vendor fair will take place on Monday, September 15th at the Radisson Ballroom. So please make a note of that. Make sure you attend. The last 3 years has been such great attendance by the community. You can learn so much about the nonprofit vendors in our area that are really here to help your employees, and to know all those resources is really beneficial from an HR standpoint. So save the date. Also, if you are looking to get your HR certification, we actually partner with the Fox Valley SHRM chapter, and they have a study group that is going to be starting on February 20th. And they have virtual opportunities to meet and study. And this is a great way to work with other HR professionals who are working on getting their certification. So you can always reach out to Cara, as she has all of the details on how to get involved with that. Next month, I am super excited. We are going to be having our virtual monthly meeting, and we are going to have Ann Bonnie, who will be presenting. For those people who maybe were in attendance at some of the other conferences, Ann has been, she's a speaker nationwide, and her presentation is called Ignite Your Shift. Dancing in the Discomfort of Change. So this is something like today's presenter you won't want to miss. So watch for registration details to be coming soon. So I'm going to open it up now if there's anyone on the call today, on the meeting today, that has any announcements that they would like to share. And remember that you are on mute, so take yourself off of mute if you have anything that you would like to share with your HR community. Okay, hearing none, we will continue to move forward with today's presentation. So I'm excited to introduce Kim Minnick. She is right now coming to us from California in the Napa area. Lucky her. In terms of an introduction, Kim is obsessed with building people ops functions and is delighted by thoughtful employee experiences. Change is the only constant, as she says, and it perfectly describes her career. No matter the industry, she creates order from chaos, bringing a relationship oriented approach to balancing business and people needs. After spending a decade in VC funded startups, she launched her own fractional business, Code. It's called Code Traveler HR, and she started that in 2023. So, super excited to welcome Kim to our meeting today, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Oh my gosh, Kim, thank you so much for having me. LASHRM chapter, what's up? Pumped to be speaking to y'all today. A quick caveat before I dive into my presentation. I am more of a migraine sufferer than a migraine accommodation creator. So kind of put everything in a gorgeous, slightly painful pot, stirred it all together, and really, really excited to chat through it today. I do have slides, mostly for my tracking more than yours. And I invite all of you to unmute if you have questions. Feel free to interrupt me. I don't think this will take the full hour, so we've got time for like chit-chatting and goodness. I'm going to learn how to share my screen on Teams. Here we go. I'm assuming folks can see my
Perfect.
screen.
Yep, we sure
Okay,
can.
great. I am a Google Meet girl, so appreciate the help. Migraines, they are not just a headache. And I think if you or one of your employees suffers from migraine attacks and you call them a headache, it's really just adding insult to injury, literally. So, first and foremost, the one thing I really want you all to take away is migraines aren't a headache, but gosh, do they sure cause a lot. Let's see. Next tab. There we go. I'm Kim. Hello. I'm really into aerial fitness. I do find that moving your body helps mitigate migraine attacks. Super into dogs, plants, and brunch. If you find yourself in Napa, let me know. We'll do all three. I'm pretty obsessed with people operations. I've been doing this work for quite some time. I'm fortunate to be in VC funded startups for most of my career and really building foundational HR processes, programs, teams, functions, the whole kit and caboodle. And most importantly, for about 25 years, since before I was a teenager, I have been suffering from migraine attacks. It's quite a delight, and I'm excited to share a little bit about it with you. So, today, obviously, we're going to talk about migraines. If you haven't had the pleasure of meeting her, you're going to get to know her. We'll talk a little bit about what they are, the impact that they have, and some tried and true and maybe not so tried and true remedies on how to deal with them. We'll talk about the support that you, as an HR professional or representative of a company, can provide, not just during a migraine attack, but also prior to, and really setting up organizational philosophies and processes and foundations so you can do less accommodations later. But when you do have to do an accommodation, we'll kind of run through the process. I've got some open source resources you might enjoy. I am fully aware you are all stellar people ops professionals, so I won't bore you with things like, here's what an accommodation request is. If you have questions, we can certainly chat through it, but I think y'all are probably pretty well versed on that part. Okay, so migraines. Let me count the painful ways. First and foremost, like I've said, a migraine is not just a headache. It's actually a neurological disorder. It does cause blindingly painful headaches and a lot of other symptoms. There are a fair amount of types of migraines. It's not just one type. The one that most people get are a typical aura. If you're lucky, you have a little bit of a warning sign where you start to see a halo around your vision, and that halo kind of closes in, as does your happiness. Vision and sensory changes are very, very common with migraines. There's also a brainstem aura migraine, and this has more physical impacts. Sufferers of these might experience vertigo. Their whole body will start shaking. Folks faint because it's actually attacking your brainstem and your physical functions. Some people suffer from chronic migraines. These migraines are defined as at least 15 days in a month for at least 3 months tenure, if not longer. Side story, I used to live next door to a woman when I was a child, and she suffered from migraines for over 10 years in a chronic fashion, and I just genuinely don't know how she survived. Hormonal migraines are very popular if you're a person who experiences a menstrual cycle, or if you're a person who's on a hormone therapy that causes large swings, particularly in estrogen. You may get migraines associated with your period or menstruation cycle. The nice thing about these is they're a little bit more predictable. Some folks are able to manage them a little bit better. There's retinal, which is a complete loss of vision or significant changes in your vision. And hemiplegic. This is a little bit more rare. Not a lot of people have this, fortunately, but this can cause entire paralysis on one side of your body. Absolutely insane, but I like talking about this because it's not just a headache. So if you have an employee who happens to mention that they have a migraine or they feel a migraine coming on, really great time, a really great thing to put in your toolkit to know, like, ooh, I might want to talk with this person later about accommodations or ways to support them. If we go back, I suffer from a few of these. I definitely get the typical aura. I'll start getting a halo. Mine are mostly hormonal, about 4 to 6 times a year. I know when they're going to come. I have the retinal problems. It is a blast. And you may be asking yourself, how did that feel? It's awful. It is generally awful. My experience personally, I have incredible sensitivity to light, sound, and smell. I typically lock myself in a dark room, cover my face as much as I can, because if I hear, see, or smell anything, it increases the pain symptoms, and it also often leads to nausea and some other fun symptoms that we don't need to talk about. Exhaustion and irritability. I find that people who are coming off of or coming up to a migraine attack, myself included, get really irritable. But honestly, I just think that's an outcome of what this whole experience is. No one is happy when they're going through this. So what do you do as an individual? Not even talking about work. I can attest mine are debilitating. Like I said, I lock myself in a dark room. Like I said, I started having these when I was about 13 years old. And every myth in the book, my family passed down to me. If you suffer from migraines, it's likely that somebody in your family does too. So I got some great ideas to take care of them, like putting banana peels on my forehead so the potassium would sink into my brain. Make that make sense. You could also try potatoes. Another one, cream of tartar under your tongue and drink pineapple juice. I don't know why. And my mom's tried and true method. She takes an uncomfortable amount of over-the-counter medicine and downs like 2 liters of Mountain Dew, thinking that the caffeine will open up the blood vessels in her brain. These don't work. But really, it is, for me, it's lay in a quiet, dark, cold room. I'm talking like blacking out my windows, putting on an eye mask, putting in noise canceling headphones, and wishing for the sweet release of heavily monitored prescription drugs. I do have to take pills for them. A lot of people do. If you look online about their relief, some things will say 30 minutes, some things will say an hour. For me, after taking a prescription pill, I can just survive. Like, I'm still not working. I cannot look at a screen. Please don't make me stand up. I cannot form together a complete sentence. So all of this is just kind of give you my personal experience with migraines. I would love to give a better version, but migraines are wildly understudied. Uh, Again, personal experience in the early 2000s, I was still arguing with doctors that they weren't headaches. But they've been around for quite some time. This isn't new. I can never say his name. Hippocrates described migraines really early on in philosophical writings and medical writings. So we know that these things have been around since about 400 BC. Some of the things that we do know, as they are getting studied more, there are physical impacts to migraines. If you get a brain scan shortly after a migraine attack, you can actually see lesions on your brain. There are some maybe lucky individuals who don't have any migraine symptoms, but they will still get these sort of brain lesions from internal migraine attacks. Most of them are healed. It's not a long-term problem, but it does leave physical remnants. People who suffer from migraines, it's been correlated for a risk factor for cardiac disease. And like I said earlier, most people who have them, about 42% actually have a family history of them. So probably why, since 400 BC, we have these wild remedies like bananas on foreheads and cream of tartar under the tongue. I genuinely believe people are searching for relief because you can't function with them. Which is really great when you're trying to be a productive member of society and go to work every day. Frankly, for me, work does not happen. I have tried to struggle through a migraine at work, particularly in the days when I was going into the office every day. I've done very cute things like throwing up under my desk, like fainting in a corner, all because, I didn't have enough PTO or I was scared to take a sick day because you know how our jobs are. We're the only ones doing these sometimes. And also, as an HR person, I think we have to model wellness sometimes, especially for our employees, especially for early career folks. They might be a little hesitant to take that time off, especially if they think, oh, it's just a headache. So let's talk about some operational practices that you can start implementing in your business, as well as some process considerations to make this easier for yourself or any folks that might suffer from this as you look at an accommodation. Whew. So operational practices. Look, flexible work. It's not just great for employee retention. It's not just great for employee engagement. It is literally a lifesaver for chronic illnesses and debilitating migraine attacks. For me, flexible work means I might not work that 9 to 5. I might not come into the office. I'm gonna get my stuff done. Don't worry. But even when I'm not having a migraine attack, I find that I tend to work better in the evenings and early mornings. I'm a bit of a waste of space in about 45 minutes. So having the ability, especially when I was in office, to say, I'm going to try and get over this migraine attack. Slack folks, or Teams folks, I'll see you at 3 p.m. Or I might not be in today, but I'll be online at this time. Giving our team the permission and putting in structure so they are empowered to work when they can work their best. Super, super, super important. I think just having that as a baseline, that doesn't just help migraine sufferers, it helps parents, caregivers, students. The delightful thing about inclusive practices is it normally benefits a lot of folks. The other flexible work is great. It doesn't work super well unless you have phenomenal information sharing practices. Some of this comes from my my desire for more remote work and more asynchronous work. But really, if we share information from the company in a documented and transparent way, and I know people love documentation, we actually give folks the power to go retrieve information anytime they want. So rather than, oh, I was out yesterday, I need to go meet with this person, or, oh, I was on vacation, I need to catch up with all these things. Instead, it's, oh, I'm just going to go to my single source of truth. All of the things that are happening in the company are written down, and I can catch up there at my own leisure. I'll talk a little bit more about a philosophy that I really, really enjoy for this. It's called team ops. But the idea is you create this single source of truth home where all of your work is consolidated. And I do mean all, not just HR, not just executive leadership, not just sales. It's a space and location where anyone can find the information they need. It's a little weird. We have to start teaching people to go retrieve information rather than ask for it. But it does enable folks to have a flexible work environment, work autonomously, be kept up to date. And when everything's written down, keeps us on the same page, literally. You hear a lot less of, oh, I didn't know, I wasn't sure, I thought I heard, because we can just point back to a written, truthful document. Any questions about operational practices? I'll pause there.
I was just going to make the comment that, this focuses a lot like on the office structure where somebody's sitting behind a desk and doing a lot of office work. But I know that we have some clients on the line that maybe they have client facing employees. Maybe in the banking industry, they need that teller there from 8 to 5, or factory work where somebody needs to be on the assembly line. And clearly, we don't want somebody on the assembly line who's in the middle of a migraine because of, not being able to see, those types of things. So opening it up to everybody, in terms of who's on the call, how have they been managing? Do they require doctor's notes saying, hey, you have been diagnosed with having migraines in the past, not just headaches? We know that. If you've ever had a migraine, you know that it's not just a headache. So just kind of throwing that out there to the group on the call today.
I'd also love to just invite folks. I typically work with knowledge workers. I typically work with folks whose life is behind a desk. And even my client facing employees tend to be ones where we can reschedule things. While folks noodle and maybe come off of mute, I worked in restaurants for a long time. Life before HR, I was a bartender. And I remember more than a few times of needing somebody to watch the bar so I could go stand in a walk-in cooler and huddle in a corner for like 25 minutes just to try and get relief.
Wow.
Yeah, it sucked. If you have those employees, and we'll talk about accommodation processes and interactive processes shortly, but like talk to them. Talk to them about not when they're having a migraine attack, not the greatest time, but like ask them, make it interactive, make it helpful, ask what they need. Maybe it's as simple as opening up if you have like a mother's room or if you have a nursing room, maybe giving them access to it. Gosh, I would even think like maybe having some rotating folks who could step in on that factory floor line and cover for just a minute. Emily, I see you unmuted.
I was just going to say, being on the opposite side of it, as someone who also suffers from migraines, and I used to work in a call center, the only way that I could get them to work with me was getting FMLA paperwork. So I think it definitely makes a difference if employers are willing to work with their employees. But if you aren't willing to meet them even a quarter of the way, you were going to lose people quickly, because that was not sustainable for me.
Mhm.
I'm like having a
Yep.
visceral reaction to being on the phone.
Yeah. Yeah, I lost 30 pounds in 3 months because I was at the chronic migraine stage and I couldn't eat anymore and I couldn't keep food down.
Emily,
So,
you should
and
be
they
doing this
weren't willing to help
presentation.
me at all. So, yeah, it definitely makes a difference when there's jobs that you can't step away from, to not treat your employees like a number and be willing to work with them.
Right.
Oh my gosh. It's such a, I mean, horrifically great call out. Like this is a chronic illness. This is a medical condition. There are lesions on your brain. Um, it's absolutely appropriate to engage in FMLA. It's absolutely appropriate for an ADA sanctioned reasonable accommodation process. Uh, yeah, it's not funny. It's real. So, I mean, those are the huge operational practices. But to your point, like not great if you're a frontline essential worker. A lot of the things, again, interactive processes, ask, iterate, evaluate, change, try again. Um, Before we dive into the accommodation process, some things that I really like when you're starting to talk about employees. Um, as we all know, an employee does not have to say, I need a reasonable accommodation for us to start the reasonable accommodation process. We just need to have our spidey senses in tune. So as soon as you hear somebody who maybe their manager mentions, yeah, they're out with headaches all the time. To me, I got to go talk to that employee. I got questions. Um, I like talking about reasonable accommodation processes. I like talking about FMLA as early as onboarding. Before folks even know if they have an issue that might need to be accommodated, I'm going to make sure that they know exactly what to expect from that process. And that goes back to having that single source of truth documentation. No one's going to remember everything from day one or week one. We know it's an overwhelming amount of information. But when we can have our process outlined, when we can have the FAQs ready to go, and if it's in a place that employees know to go, I'm Notion. I use a lot of Notion docs. They can always go explore that at their own cadence. Um, this is scary for folks, right? Like Emily, when you were at that call center, I bet you suffered through because you didn't want to lose your job. Our employees,
No, I was just going to say yes. And then the added stress of the negative pushback also, then it was very bad cycle. So yeah, it definitely helps if people are supportive.
right? Like there's one scenario where you're, oh, I suffer. You might not even know. I suffer. I have a lot of headaches. Like it's really tough right now. And your manager comes to you and says, oh my gosh, I'm going to bring in HR. Let me help. Or where you can go get the support and resources versus I'm suffering with this. I have a problem. My performance is impacted. And your manager says, it's a headache. Go take a Tylenol and get back on the phone. Like we are, we are missing an opportunity to create a wow moment in our employee experience. Um, for me, especially with migraines, get better first. We'll deal with the paperwork later. Go home, take care of yourself, log off. We'll do the paperwork. Um, Similarly, when folks, again, I work a little bit more with knowledge workers, but make it easy for folks to call out. Make it easy for folks to let you know that they are unable to work. Um, Again, I can't stare at a screen. I'm saying hello to the toilet in new ways. I'm not able to hold a long conversation about why I can't go into work. And then, of course, hey, we're HR. Let's track it. Um, especially if you're going through an FMLA process, there are timelines and amounts of protections you should be aware of. It's important to understand how folks are utilizing the time off, the sick leave, if they're hitting that cap. So, how does your reasonable accommodation process or your FMLA accommodations interact with your paid time off philosophies or programs? Cool. So, we've already started flirting with it. Let's talk a little bit about the accommodation process. Um, a few things that we've kind of already touched on, but some employees don't know that they are entitled to this. They don't know that this exists. And if you are someone like me who's been dealing with something for, gosh, 12 years by the time I was in the workforce, I never thought to ask about this. Like, that was for people who really needed it. Um, all of our employees really need it. It's not on them to decide, it's on us to help support them. So I have two um, guiding lights when I'm engaging in an accommodation process. Make it inviting and make it effective. So what do I mean by inviting? First and foremost, again, it's a really proactive process. You may never need an accommodation. You may never need protected leave, but you're darn sure going to know about it. I'm going to tell you about it in onboarding. I'm going to tell you about it at least twice a year in people ops updates, remind you that it exists. And I'm going to make sure my managers are deeply trained. I want them to know what an interactive accommodation process looks like. I want them to know the words that they need to look out for, or the actions or the behaviors. So they come to me with, I think we need to accommodate this person instead of this person's underperforming and I want to fire them. Um, so they need to know the differences between that. Obviously documented. Again, big fan of single source of truth. I've got some links so you can see what this looks like at the end of presentation, but document it in a way that folks understand. Speaking personally, I used to be so good at writing textbook perfect people operations documents. It looked like an HR manager wrote them, and my employees hated reading them. And when it's something as important as your wellness, I think it's important that they understand it. So my trick here, I still write like an HR manager. I am a textbook when I write. And then after I finish writing it, I leave it for a couple days. And when I'm in like a little bit more of a carefree mood, I'll go back and reread it. And then you kind of see like, oh, this is tough to understand. This is actually intimidating. So when you document it, write down the process and write down what folks should expect from the manager's perspective, from the employee's perspective. As more people engage in this, you're going to get some same questions. Go ahead and write those questions down. Create an FAQ for folks. Great for folks who need the process, great for your managers, and great for your HR team. If you have to step away as the HR leader or as the HR generalist who does the paperwork, having this playbook on deck makes it so anyone else can pick up the process, which is the shared part. I don't keep these playbooks just with HR. They are public to the company. My highest recommendation would be invite people to collaborate on them. No need to lock it down. Have folks ask questions, have folks suggest edits if it's in a collaborative space like Notion or Google Docs. Let them engage in the process before they even need the process. Like, look, HR can be scary sometimes. These are ways that we're extending that olive branch to our employees to let them know that we're not scary, we're helpful. And offered. Proactively offer it when you can, whether it's from HR, whether it's from your manager, and make sure like the employee might say no. That's happened a lot to me. Like, hey, I'm noticing this. Here's our here's our interactive accommodation process. What that means is I'm worried I'm worried that these things might have a long-term impact on your performance. So how can we make sure it doesn't? How can we support you to be the best employee you can be at your most well state? And hopefully with all of that, folks actually do get excited to engage in the process, or at least are a little bit more open about it. Personal preference. I don't love a doctor's note for some of these things. I'm never gonna get a doctor's note for my migraines, y'all. I'm just not. Um, that means I have to find more time in my day to go to the doctor, to talk to them about my migraine. My doctor doesn't know about my needs at this point because it's managed by a few different ones. And all of this just to get a piece of paper for my employer. Is that inviting? It's a great documentation. Sure, totally. But I do think there's some give and take, and I would recommend you think about what you really need from your employees to design a great accommodation. Um, my 2 cents. I don't love a doctor's note. I'll unmute there. Maybe some folks feel differently, especially those with those frontline workers.
I'll say something. So recently I heard a policy where my work they can't ask for doctor's notes because of HIPAA laws. So I'm wondering if that would play into that. So technically they couldn't even ask for doctor notes, but I think that just might be in some cases.
Yeah, I think the HIPAA regulations are a little different. Certainly, I think that's a great CYA on the company side. Like, we don't even want the documentation. Don't even give it to us because of those HIPAA laws. I know I've done some HIPAA training, so I can engage in that stuff, but I'd rather not. I'd rather just trust the employee, to be honest. Anyone else?
I'm with you on no doctor note. Because like with my migraines, I lose vision in my left eye, so I can't even drive. So then if you're asking your employee who might be having an ocular migraine or a retinal migraine to get themselves to a doctor, it could be really, really unsafe, especially if they feel they have no choice and they have no one else they can ask to get them there and they don't have money for an Uber or a Lyft. You can be putting your employees at severe risk.
Yeah, and like let's play that out, right? So you can't see, you're nauseated and you're irritable. Best case scenario. And now I have to figure out transportation, whether it, to your point, Uber, Lyft, which means I have to look at a screen, which means I have to spend money to go to my doctor's office, hope that they can take me, hope that they can give me a doctor's note right then. Uh, my doctor's office is weird and they go on lunch at weird hours. Like they're just, is it an accommodation when you're putting in so many speed bumps? It's a question you and your team have to answer for you. All right, and then effective. So accessible, we've talked a lot about this, but reminder, an employee can request an accommodation, can request a form change. Can request an accommodation from anyone. They don't even have to say those words, which is why it's so important to train your managers. My managers just often know that they don't know enough, so they know to call me, which is great. That's great. And we celebrate and I tell them great job and we talk about it. And then as we go through it, I always hold a little debrief with them. Every time with the three of us meet together, later the manager and I are going to meet. Like, what questions do you have? What you thought? How would you do it differently next time? That way you're engaging the managers in the process too. It's not just an HR process. But we do kick it off, right? We do hold all of the paperwork. We are familiar with FMLA. We know folks' tenures, how many hours they've worked. We know what is reasonable to the company. I have had unreasonable requests in the past. So you need to be able to have those conversations. And I don't always trust my managers with it. transparent. Obviously, not the medical documentation and the paperwork, but the process. The communication to the team is important, especially if you have those frontline workers or folks whose work will need to be covered. Um, that is a communication strategy I design with the employee. It's up to them on how much they want to say. It's up to them on what their coworkers know. But eventually, their coworkers might realize, gosh, this person's out a lot. I need to know why, or I want to know why. Because now you're starting to get into team dynamics, a little bit salty. Why does this person get so much time off and my PTO request just got denied? Those are things you want to make sure that the team feels good about while still respecting the privacy of the employee. Hence why it's such a collaborative partnership. And then engaging, I check in a lot, especially with something like a migraine that is so chronic or so long term. It's not, babies grow up, bodies recover from those sorts of things, but some of the more chronic long-term illnesses, it's really good to just check in. Everything might be great. Things might just be good enough, but it's good for you to know. And then I like to offer a few different ways to capture information. It doesn't always have to be a live synchronous meeting. Sometimes it's written engagements via Slack. Sometimes it's emails. Some of my employees I'll text because I know that works for them. Engage with that at your own risk. But how are you capturing that information? How are you making sure employees can give that information in a way that works best? And with that, some free stuff. And I'll share the link to this deck so you all can actually have the whole deck and edit it as you will. Remote.com, these are all free open resources. Remote.com has a great approach, employee-facing document for how to request accommodations. Disclo, it's a little formal, but they have a great interactive process template. GitLab, they are a fully remote company and they pride themselves on transparency. Their whole handbook is online, and it's a really great handbook. And they also offer a course called Team Ops Foundations, totally free. It's about 6 hours, and it is everything you need to know about developing a workforce with a single source of truth operating philosophy. It's pretty cool. It changed how I thought about remote and distributed work across offices as well. So I highly recommend you check that out. And this is me. Feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. It's an absolute fever dream in my world, bringing jokes to your feed daily. But also, I'm a fractional people partner. I am a helping hand for hire. So if you would like any assistance, or if you just want to have a one-on-one chat about things like people programs, fractional HR leadership, or what I lovingly call micro engagements, short-term engagements, I am happy to follow me, shoot me a message, email me, send smoke signals. But that is all I've got. Kim, what did I miss? What should I have touched on?
I don't think you missed anything. Just one note, Emily will be sending out the link or the slides so that you have those and you'll have those links so you weren't feverishly writing them down. To follow up on Gracie's comment about HIPAA, with regard to like FMLA and those types of things, employers that request medical certification for FMLA are not subject to HIPAA. Obviously, under other laws like ADA and those types of things, you want to make sure you keep that employee medical information confidential. But when you're requesting as an employer for medical certification, you are not subject to HIPAA. So just one thing I wanted to throw in there. If somebody else has comments or questions about that, certainly feel free to unmute yourself and mention any questions, comments.
Sorry, I spent like the last 5 minutes thinking about this as well. And I am wondering, Gracie, if you are in a state that has paid safe and sick leave laws where you can't, if someone's like taking the day off because they have a headache, you can't request any certification for that. But if somebody's asking for like a long-term or short-term accommodation request of some sort to start that process, it is, at least in my experience, absolutely acceptable to ask for doctor certification unless that person is pregnant and they are requesting an accommodation for migraines as a result of being pregnant.
Great point, Megan. Gracie, are you in a
I
state that is safe for sick leave? Like Minnesota?
I'm actually in Wisconsin. It was just
Okay.
something I heard at one point during my work day, so I like didn't really know the exact process of what they were referring to, but I did hear at one point that was a thing and that they weren't accepting doctor's notes. So I'm not entirely sure. I just remember hearing that.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love it when
it's such a
people bring things up to chat
yeah.
about.
And it's such a good reminder that, like, I mean, of course, we all know this. Across states, laws vary. Across counties, laws vary. Across states, benefits vary. You know, California, we have state-sponsored short-term disability. So, like, know all of the tools in your toolkit as you approach these conversations is, man, our jobs, huh?
Any other questions or comments? Everybody's so
Even
quiet
outside of
today.
migraines.
Yeah, even outside of migraines.
Everyone's like, it's a 2025 problem.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for sharing. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome.
I'm so
Thanks,
glad.
Gracie. All right, hearing no other comments or concerns, we have a little giveaway here. Little book by Julie Hamilton. Kim, if you have written a book or plan to write a book, we'll give your book away too.
Oh, I've got a playbook called Reviews Suck, and it's all about how performance reviews suck. I'll send that over to you.
Yes, that would be
Yeah.
awesome.
There's a follow-up called Suck This Pip, but that feels a little inappropriate.
Oh,
Or
is that on your
maybe
website? Can we find that
it is.
on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and
All
I'll
right.
send you some links to it too.
Awesome. Awesome. Arminda is our winner, so we will make sure to get this out to you soon. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for attending today. Make sure to register for the January meeting and have a great holiday season. And thank you to our speaker. Thank you, Kim, for being with us today. Appreciate everyone's attention. Have a great rest of your day. Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you.